right, welcome to another episode of the Cassels Cast. Today, joining the show is going to be Kenny Kluska. Today, joining the show is going to be Kenny Kluska for a New York Knicks season preview. We also have an episode that you can check out, a Portland Trailblazers season preview with Finn Keel and Reese Coons. So, without any further ado, let's get into my conversation with Kenny. All right, joining the show now is Kenny Kluska to discuss the New York Knicks up and coming season. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. More than 2 months since the championship. Waited my whole life for this, and it's something that's gonna last forever. Even if the Knicks were to somehow win 4 or 5 more championships in my lifetime, would be great. But you'll always remember the first. So yeah, it's just been an outstanding summer. Constantly watching videos on YouTube, rewatching some of the finals games, rewatching some of the playoff games. Yeah, just really enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely. The summer after is definitely special, and it sounds like you're still riding high, and rightfully so after that incredible run. Last time we had you on the pod, I believe the Knicks were up 2-0, and now a couple months later, they're officially the champs, obviously, and you're still riding high, which is great to see. Even as a Celtics fan, I can definitely be happy for the Knicks fans. Incredible fan base and obviously well deserved after so many years. Relatively quiet offseason for the Knicks, which is to be expected after you win the championship. The big change would be Mitchell Robinson in his departure to the Celtics, which was obviously kind of a second apron thing where they didn't want to go over the second apron to keep him, which literally like every NBA team is treating it as a hard cap. So yeah, as someone whose favorite player was Mitch, can you just discuss like the loss and sort of the void it leaves behind with the team?
I mean, all the rumors all off season, and I mean, James Dolan even flat out said it. Not going in the second apron, it's suicidal. Uh, so it all the writing was on the all the writing on the wall was that Mitch was going to leave. I always kept out a slim bit of hope that possibly he could return, but I also never allowed it to be too much because I wanted to not be too upset when the news did come. And maybe, what was it, the third day of free agency, that Shams tweet finally came out. Boston Celtics. I'm like, oh man, I already know what some people are gonna say, and the majority of Knicks fans aren't saying it. They appreciate Mitch for the 8 years, bringing them a championship, that huge offensive rebound, the end in Game 5, the dunk over Embiid. But yeah, of course, there's that small contingent of Knicks fans, trader, going to, Boston Celtics, Boston, New York, hate each other. But it's a business. The Celtics offered him the most money. He's going to take it. To expect Mitch to go come back to the Knicks when, what were they going to be able to offer him? 2, 3, 4 million. It just wasn't realistic. But I definitely appreciate his 8 years. Going to be a huge miss for the Knicks, huge loss for the Knicks, I should say. Defensive, obviously their best rim protector, probably the best offensive rebounder in the game, and just was so good natured. Was fun on social media. Some of the things he said are a little kooky, but it's okay. It made Mitch, and you knew he was always going to bring it on game night. So yeah, it was tough. Again, as you mentioned, my favorite player pretty much since his rookie year. He's been my favorite. But you move on. Knicks still got a very stacked team. Uh, Definitely will miss him for sure. Rooting for the best with Boston, except the 4 times we play the Celtics. But yeah, and I'm hoping he could improve to 50% free throw shooting, at least for you. I know you're a Celtics fan, so yes, for your team.
Yeah, maybe Missoula will get him right in that department. Yeah, I think it kind of makes sense for Mitch to go to a team that offers him more money, obviously, and then still offers him a winning situation. I feel like you just have to put that aside, and I'm always like pro player in that way, where it's like hey, these organizations can trade you at any time to any team, and you have no say. So if you have a better opportunity in front of you, you might as well take that. I don't really have any issue with that, especially as a Celtics fan, obviously. In terms of just the void, I do think it is significant because he's one of their top seven guys on the team, and yeah, integral as that offensive rebounder, that rim protector. So very important to the team. With that being said, though, like basketball wise, we'll talk about signing Andre Drummond in a second, which is like, yeah, okay, fine replacement for what they could do. Um, I don't think it's like an absolutely devastating loss to the point where it's like I'm gonna rethink where they stack up in the East or in the title picture. Just based on the fact that you could maybe make some of that up in the aggregate, and that the Knicks are just so good throughout the roster. That starting five is just so perfect, and they were dominant in their run to the NBA Finals. I feel like if it was a situation where the games were a little bit closer, the series were a little bit closer, Mitch was like the key swing factor when he was on the court. Not that he wasn't important. I feel like I would have just rethought that a little bit more, but ultimately I still view the Knicks as, we'll talk about this more later, but I still view them as the favorites in the East, and I still think they're in a really strong spot overall, despite this unfortunate Mitchell Robinson loss.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't even playing like 13 to 15 minutes a game in the playoffs, so we'll talk about his replacement. Don't think he's as good, but we could transition to that for sure, and I'll give more thoughts.
Yeah, so they signed Andre Drummond on that minimum contract. In terms of like guys in free agency that could have been signed at the minimum, I think it makes a lot of sense. But ultimately, do you view Drummond as that full time backup center, or do you think this is going to be a void that we see addressed at some point in the season, or maybe a late offseason move?
I mean, I think it can be an issue. There's also Knicks fans point out, oh, his stats are very similar to Mitch's when it comes to points and rebounds, but you got to look, way past that. Nobody who watched either guy would say at this point that Drummond's even comparable to Mitch on the defensive end. And we saw the 76ers not really want to play him much in the playoffs, especially in that series against the Knicks. So that's where you really think about his fit would be more in the postseason, where you're going to need that rim protector. And as good as Karl Anthony Towns is, he's incredible. We know his main bugaboo is getting in foul trouble. Maybe one silly foul a game, offensive hooking a guy, driving to the hoop. And, that's going to put Drummond in a position where he's going to need to play some important minutes, maybe sometimes early in the game. And he's still an excellent rebounder. There's no question about that. So it's not like he's not going to provide any value. But yeah, I just, especially come playoff time, I don't know if he's going to be that backup center that I want for the Knicks, especially if Towns does get in foul trouble. If they don't find an upgrade, you might even see Mike Brown potentially go with like an OG at center lineup at times. Probably not for long stints, but it depends on how much you can trust Drummond. He's only getting older. His lateral movement nowhere near Mitch's. He's not going to be able to, run out the 3-point shooters like Mitch could. So the rebounding is excellent. Still a good interior scorer for the most part. I get he can shoot the three ball a little bit, but what's he going to make? Maybe 33s this upcoming year. So it's not like a huge impact in that sense. So it's a definite downgrade to me, but like you said, for the minimum salary, you weren't going to find a Mitch replacement, and Mitch is a very unique player, so that would have been difficult regardless of how much room they had. So it's a move that it's definitely not lateral. It's a downgrade, but in the long run, going to make a huge impact on the next championship opportunity. We know Leon Rose is, if he sees that it's a clear areas that he needs to improve. He's going to do what he can in order to do that. The Knicks still have a roster spot open. I could see them going into training camp with a bunch of big guys, seeing which guy prevails as the third center. I mean, they did it last year, and Landry Shamet got the position, and look how awesome he was. So yeah, I don't really trust Andre Drummond as a backup center, especially in a playoff setting. But yeah, I do prefer him over some of the other guys, minimum guys like a Kevon, Nick Richards, who looks like he's probably going to go to the Heat. Guys like that. Drummond probably was the best option for a minimum. Debatable if bringing Huckporty back would have been a better option, more continuity in that sense, much younger. Drummond probably still has the higher upside than at least for the 2026-27 season.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Kind of the best they could do, like we said. Um, I don't think it's like a high upside move at all. I think when I view Drummond, he's a solid like 15-minute a game guy in the regular season. He's kind of a innings eater in that regard. So sure, I feel fine about him in a regular season setting, taking over some of those Towns minutes. But to your point, my concern would just be in the playoffs in those high leverage situations. Is he really a dependable backup big at this stage? Probably not. I think ideally Drummond is your third big man, and even we saw that with the Sixers, where like ideally it's kind of Bona over Drummond in that sense. So I feel like for the Knicks, this is still going to be a void that I'm going to be flagging up until the trade deadline. At this point in the offseason, a move feels pretty unlikely, and the Knicks have been active. They have tried to make some moves. They tried to get Musa Cisse to fill this void, which I thought would have been a really nice pickup. Dallas matched that. I thought that was an easy decision for them, but that could have been a nice pickup. The Pelicans apparently used Misi as some integral part of their core, despite winning 27 games, so they struck out on him. But I think like revisiting some of those names at the deadline, especially Misi, could be worthwhile because like if the Pelicans are 14th in the West or something like that, which I kind of envision them being, why would they be holding on to Misi this feverishly? But who knows? It's a weird front office. Maybe somebody else becomes available. Maybe like one of those Hornet centers becomes available. So I do think there could be some options for them, but I think this is going to be a void that I'm not saying they can't win a championship with Drummond as their backup center, but ideally to maximize your chances of repeating, I think you're just going to need another center in there. The other guy is Mo Diawara, who is a little bit undersized at that center position, but he does bring like a nice floor spacing component, so maybe he could have a bigger role. But in terms of just a dependable backup big man, which you had with Mitchell Robinson, he was probably the most dependable backup big in the league, or at least one of them. That's just a void that this team's going to have to either address at some point, or it's just going to be a concern heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, Cisse definitely would have been a huge ad, but the second I, saw the contract offer, I'm like, I know Dallas has a bunch of centers, but you can't turn that down. You got to you keep them. So it would have been nice if they did add him. I actually think he would have probably usurped Drummond in the rotation at some point, but that's gone now. But yeah, Leon Rose, he'll definitely be on the phones if it's clearly an issue. Like you said, once the trade deadline, we'll see teams that clearly will be needing to sell. I know they were also in Makovich, that's his name, right? On the
Correct,
Pelicans.
yeah.
Yeah, they also were on him as well. So yeah, the Pelicans bunch of centers, like you said, the Hornets, Brennan maybe, or the Diabate. Those are guys that potentially they could look to move as they have Naz Reid and Hans Steinbach now. So yeah, I mean, a regular season, we have 40, 45 games with Drummond as the backup center. Probably won't be a huge issue. I mean, it's not going to cost them many wins. So, and as we saw this season, it's not like the Knicks desperately need to get that number one seed in the East.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Definitely worth flagging, but overall, if this is like your biggest problem, I don't think that's a bad thing, and the rest of the Knicks roster is just really complete. I do want to, it might be a little bit of a sore subject for you, especially after losing Mitchell Robinson, but I gotta ask about Deuce's role, especially as that like trade chip, just because it did seem like once Alvarado came into the fold, Deuce became a little bit more expendable, and then he has that contract coming up. The Knicks probably aren't gonna afford him. So do you sort of see him as like their main ticket to a center, or do you think he's still like a valuable enough piece to where he's worth keeping around, and they're gonna try to keep him around and then see what they can do once his contract expires?
So this is difficult for me. I would say you don't trade Deuce just to have a third center on the roster. So like a guy that it's debatable whether he should be playing over Drummond. That Deuce is too valuable just to add center depth for a guy who won't be a rotation piece if everyone's healthy. It is going to be difficult to re-sign him. They've had him on an excellent deal, which was great timing. It was they signed him that extension very shortly before they traded Barrett in quickly for OG. And once that 2-for-1 trade went down, it was McBride that was ascended into the rotation. But he led the team in 3-point percentage last year, well over 40%. He definitely had his off moments in the postseason. His shooting wasn't great, other than one of the games against the Hawks and then game four against the 76ers. But, you look at his on off splits throughout his career, and there's a reason that it's all green on basketball reference for the most part. Even in the playoffs last year, when he had his shooting struggles, the team played better with him on the court. They also, he does seem to do better as the off guard rather than just being Brunson's straight up backup. So having Alvarado allows him to do that. Yes, it's a small backcourt, but he's a very feisty defender. I think if he was, let's say, 3-4 inches taller, he could probably be almost in the all defensive conversation. So even at 6'2", he's going to bring it on the defensive end. Probably better than anyone, any other backups, I should say. Sam, it brings it at times, but I think Deuce is a little bit better in the defensive end. But we look at the Knicks roster, it's understandable why you see him and believe that he would be probably the top trade candidate if they do decide to go that route. Know that there's a decent chance they won't be able to bring him back, and they clearly desire another backup center. He would be the most tradable guy. You're not going to get anything for Dottier. Tyler Kolek's just not making enough. And if the Knicks are healthy, how much is he going to play to enhance his value? So yeah, it's unfortunate, but second apron does things like that. It's the reason why Mitch is no longer on the team, and it might be the reason that come next season or even at the trade deadline, Deuce is no longer on the team. So, yeah, you would need to get a guy, especially if you're looking at that center position, that clearly is an upgrade over Andre Drummond. That's the only way I'm going to consider trading Deuce for a center. Again, yes, they do need that third big man, but you don't want to trade Deuce for a player that's break in case of emergency type of guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm totally aligned with you there. I view Deuce as a high end backup guard. I know he wasn't like incredible in the playoffs or anything, but I think he's proven that, and I do really value his skill set. Like you said, the defense is really strong, despite his smaller frame. Really good shooter, connective playmaker. I do value that, and I do think he's a really valuable role player. So I'm just not, if I'm the Knicks, I'm just not going to trade him for the sake of trading him. But if you can fill that high end backup center void, I think it would be worth it, especially with the contract situation. And then you also have Jose Alvarado, who can fill that role as like a backup guard. And then Tyler Kolek is a guy I'm pretty high on. I think he could have a bigger role, and right now he's just kind of buried in the depth chart. So maybe he is the path to trade in for that third string center. But if you do trade for a high end center, I think Deuce is the ticket there, and then you sort of promote Kolek to a bigger role, and you fill that with him and Alvarado. I think that just balances the team out a little bit nicer. But the big caveat is finding that high end backup center, and we did mention a few names, but it is kind of difficult to pinpoint like names outside of those guys. And who knows? Like again, maybe the Pelicans just want to hold on to Misi. Maybe the Hornets don't want to trade one of the young centers, and then from there, it's like, yeah, who exactly do you go for in that regard? So it could be challenging, but I would definitely view him as a potential trade candidate, especially with their guard depth and then need at center.
Yeah, and what's crazy is James Edwards, the Athletic, he recently did a poll, all a bunch of questions, and one of them was, should the Knicks look to trade Deuce because of upcoming free agency, need for a third center, and it was the closest vote by far. I think like 38% said keep him, 36% said deal him. He's gonna, leave in the off season, so it was pretty much 50-50, and the rest were undecided. So it's a really tough situation that the Knicks are in, and again, it's second apron. Look at all the guys that Thunder had to get rid of. It's just going to occur, and we'll see next time. Um, if it's ever amended where this doesn't have to happen, I like it to a certain extent, but I don't like it when it's homegrown players that you're forced to move on from because you can't afford them.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there with the second apron. In principle, I think it's like a good idea. And I do think there has been some benefits like, hey, guess what? We're never going to see a KD Warrior situation again. I think we can all be happy about that. Although that was probably the best team of all time. Regardless, it is really unfair that these smart organizations, whether it be the Knicks who have really just built this thing from the ground up, they've obviously made some big trades, but they've also found diamonds in the rough by drafting well with like a Mitchell Robinson, a Deuce McBride, and then to penalize them, I think is unfair. And then same thing, with the Thunder, it's purely homegrown talent, and you're penalizing the smartest organization in the league for being too good at their job because they got a ton of picks back and they drafted really well with those picks. So from that standpoint, I do think there could be like maybe even if it's like just a one-time deal where it's like once every 3 years or whatever, you have a hometown exception where you can go over. I think there does need to just be some sort of amendment because seeing these constant cap casualties is kind of annoying and it catches up to everyone. I don't think it's totally fair in that regard. But yeah, that's a conversation for a different day. Unfortunately, we do have more second apron talk with the Knicks coming up about the Towns extension. But before that, I do want to highlight Tyler Nickel, the Knicks second round pick, because he was an absolute flamethrower in summer league. I know the Knicks summer league it was kind of a mess because they didn't have a lot of young talent there, but Nickel was a real standout, and at Vanderbilt he was an absolute sniper. So yeah, what do you think of Nickel? I don't think he's gonna have a long-term role with this team. And then I guess this is also second apron related because they did trade the pick that turned into Cam Carr. They traded down and then ultimately moved back to the second round and drafted Nickel. So what did you think of that draft strategy? Did you wish you had a little bit more of a high-end prospect? And then what do you think of Nickel's more so role with the team in the future?
Um, for the most part, it's in Leon's I trust. The draft strategy was an interesting one for sure. I mean, watching the draft, you thought the Knicks had three or four guys. Find out a minute later, oh, he's traded. No, he's traded. So it was interesting, and obviously it was all staying under a second apron. Personally, I would have loved to see them have drafted Henry Vassier after his huge drop. He could have potentially filled that third center role. But nonetheless, Nickel does seem like a great pickup. It was fun to watch in summer league. The Knicks, as you mentioned, were a disaster. I didn't really care coming off a championship. But yeah, I did want to watch some of the young pieces, the Nichols, the Dios, the Dottiers. So it was fun watching Nickel come off screens, bang threes all game. Definitely a fun guy to watch in that summer league setting. Obviously, summer league is not quite the NBA regular season. Interesting that he's still unsigned. I mean, the Knicks' strategy of roster building this offseason is far different than everyone else's. They have two roster spots open, but they're only going to fill one because that's all they can before entering the second apron. And I think I read somewhere that like 80% of the teams have all three of their two-way spots filled. Maybe four or five have one spot open. The Knicks do not have a single player signed to a two-way deal. So it's interesting, and it almost leads you to think maybe Leon Rose has some type of strategy that none of the fans or smart media folks can figure out. But yeah, I think Nickel will eventually get one of those three two-way spots. The Knicks rarely use them. I mean, last year was Jemison, McCullough, Dylan Jones, and those guys played maybe a combined, I don't know, 30 games for the Knicks, all in blowouts for the most part. So it'll probably be more of a developmental year for Nickel. I definitely think his three-point shot gives him could give him a somewhat lengthy career in the NBA. Of course, he's not a perfect player, or else he never would have waited till the second round. He could definitely stand to improve on the defensive end. He's not going to be much of a distributor on the offensive end, but yeah, that three-point shot is going to keep him in the NBA. It's just a team like the Knicks. It's one of the difficult organizations at the time for a young guy to come in and really have a role. So yeah, it's probably going to be a lot of Westchester Knicks for Nickel, but he's definitely promising. Perhaps if Deuce were to leave, I know not quite the same position, but Nickel more small forward type. But yeah, maybe he could be a guy that gets that standard deal after Deuce leaves and finds a small role in the rotation, especially if guys like OG, I wouldn't say Bridges, he never misses a game, but a guy like OG needs to sit out. Nickel can play, 10, 15 minutes a game, knock down a three or two. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of upside with him. You're just probably, there's very little chance you're going to see it this season, at least with the NBA club.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes sense. Getting a guy with one elite NBA skill in the second round, especially the mid second round, in and of itself is a win. And I think Nickel was one of the more intriguing second round prospects for me. Big draft guy. I didn't have him like top 30 or anything, but I would say he was a higher end second round pick. So I thought that was a nice snag for the Knicks. And then he obviously showed out in Summer League as we discussed. The Daystar point is really interesting. He did fall to 52 to Atlanta. And there was definitely some agent motivation behind that, where his agent didn't want him to go to certain teams. We see this all the time with second round picks. However, I don't understand why his agent or his agency wanted to push him to Atlanta instead of the Knicks, because I feel like everyone knew that Mitchell Robinson was leaving. I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was kind of the worst kept secret around. So there could have been a real opportunity for him there. So I don't know exactly. Maybe Knicks just liked Nickel more, but I feel like Desari was a projected first round pick. And given their need, I feel like it had to be something agent related. But yeah, again, I don't know why his agency wouldn't have wanted him to land in New York. I do think that's actually a good situation, especially when you look at Atlanta drafting a center in Zuby Ejiofor in the round before. So, little interest in there, but thinking about like Vesar's for a second, that would have been very intriguing because he can stretch the floor at a high level. Decent like shot blocker. He does need to like bulk up a little bit. Not the best defender in the world, but for a second round pick, he would have been awesome, and I think he would have had a real chance to crack the rotation. But nevertheless, I do think getting a guy in nickel, like I said, who just has that like elite signature skill, that's a win in and of itself. We'll see. I don't like you said he'll probably just play in the G League mostly. I assume he gets one of those two-way contracts, even though nothing is official to this point, which is very interesting that they have zero two-way contracts. They got those open roster spots at this point in the offseason. That is a very interesting tidbit. But yeah, probably like mostly a G League guy. Maybe he has some big moments at the end of the season. Or something like that, maybe injuries. But long term, I do think just having like a shooting specialist is going to be valuable. And then, yeah, maybe he can ultimately carve out some sort of like Landry Shamet role. He'd have to improve on defense, but we saw Shamet take a similar path. Like it took him a while to become like an NBA level defender, and now he's a legit high end 3-and-D guy. So, intriguing long term prospect, and certainly someone who's fun to watch. I do think we can move ahead to the Karl Anthony Towns extension, which is currently probably the biggest story around the Knicks right now. Do want to pull up his contract details, and this is definitely another thing we don't. I mean, the amount of times we've said second apron already, and we're gonna continue to have to say it. This is just a big thing with the Knicks. Nearing the second apron. So Towns' last full year of his deal, 57 million, and then he has a 61 million dollar player option. He is, I believe, supermax eligible, if I'm not mistaken, for his next contract. So obviously a ton of money. That's really, frankly, something the Knicks can't afford. So they do need him to take some sort of a discount. I think the question just becomes how much money is Cat willing to sacrifice, and how much does he really value playing on this Knicks team? So yeah, any thoughts on how this Cat contract situation is going to play out? And as someone who follows the Knicks a heck of a lot closer than I do, any intel on maybe like a potential time?
Yeah, so the max he could actually extend for is 4 years, $272 million. So if I do the math real quick, that's 68 million per season. For a guy who the last year of that deal will be 35, I think. So yeah, 35. So I don't expect him to fall off a cliff as goes through his early to mid 30s, but yeah, that's going to be a huge downfall for the Knicks trying to keep other pieces around if Towns were to accept that. Now, he's said in the past, it was a few months back, how he probably would be willing to take less. A lot of people agree. James Edwards has said that he thinks, he doesn't exactly have full intel on it, but he believes that Towns will take less. And yeah, it's it's crucial to keep him. I think absolutely. You don't want to see him walk. And but 68 million a year would be kind of crazy for Towns. Um, Timeline-wise, I haven't necessarily heard anything about when they want to get it done. I mean, they also have a Josh Hart extension that they have to deal with. Obviously, Hart won't make anywhere near as much. He's probably, I would guess, in the line of somewhere between maybe 20, 25 million a year for Hart. But yeah, Towns, I really do believe he loves being in New York. That's pretty obvious. His dad gets to be in the front row with his now wife and every game at MSG. So, that means a lot to him. Family, we know, all the time with the Timbers, how much family meant to him. Unfortunately lost all those members to COVID. But yeah, I do think he absolutely wants to be with the Knicks. I don't think the front office would give him a offer that would completely turn him off. Let's say, I don't know, 35, 40 million a year, where that's not even two-thirds of what he can make. That would probably not be something that he would be interested in. It's definitely a tough situation because he wants to stay. The Knicks want him to stay. He was incredible in this postseason. You wonder if some of the things he unlocked with his playmaking. I mean, he's always been a pretty good playmaker. I mean, some of the passes you see him make, like, absurd. Like, other than Jokic, I don't know what center can make some of the passes he does. Just, the Joker obviously does it a lot more frequently. And, the way he 40% pretty much every year from three. So definitely quite the impactful player. Made a step forward in defense this year. He really became a better defender. You're not going to see it in the blocks numbers. But other than the foul woes, which definitely come up fairly often, just such a good player. But yeah, especially in this second apron era, it would, that Donovan Mitchell extension with Cleveland, I think, is going to age horribly. As good as the Joker is, man, he signs the max with all the second apron problems they're having. I can't see that aging well, as good as he is. And we don't know if Brunson's going to take a pay cut when next time the extension's due up for him. And if he didn't, I don't think anyone would be upset with him. So I think it's important for him to take A decent amount off of that. How much? That's difficult to say. But yeah, 4 years, 272 million in a second apron era would definitely make it difficult to continue being one of the top teams in the league, especially as I mentioned, turns into his early 30s, mid 30s. So I do expect him to take some off. How much that is, really difficult to say.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, as much as we can try to guess and speculate, we really don't know. I think like ideally, could they get him like maybe like 45 million over 3 years, something like that. I don't know. That's just a total guess. We really don't know, but I do think like the reality is that like teams aren't just handing out these super max deals. I think like Mitchell is kind of an outlier in that regard, and Mitchell I would say a little bit better than Cat, but also like guess what? I'm not trying to pay a guy who's not a clear top 10 guy in the league that much money, especially. I mean, this is totally like an aside with Mitchell, like an undersized guard who kind of relies on athleticism. I'm with you. I think that contract just isn't going to age too well, frankly. Yeah, but I just don't think teams are handing out super max deals. I think, especially in the apron era, like teams are just so much smarter about this stuff. So yeah, at some point, like Cat will have to sacrifice money. It's just like how much, and how much is he willing to do. I know like maybe he could decline that player option and really help the team out because that is a hefty hit for the following season. But who knows? Maybe it's a situation where he picks that player option up and then extends for a few more years. So yeah, there's a lot of ways this can unfold. I do think like depending on the number though, at some point it just is gonna trigger certain roster changes. Whether that be like one of the wins, unfortunately, like one of those three guys might have to go. I think that's just the unfortunate reality of these aprons. But I mean, it's better to happen after you win a championship than
Oh
before.
yeah.
I think the second apron, it's just a total hard cap. I don't know why they just don't call it a hard cap because literally at this point, no team's gonna go over it, guys. I know the Nuggets are technically in the second apron right now, but guess what? That's not gonna stay. There's a move happening at some point this offseason or at the very latest in the middle of the season. Um, Regardless, I do think it is just like a tricky situation. I think one other than just like teams being smarter and like, hey, Cat, you're not gonna get a super max. Too bad. Here's what you can make. I think Brunson taking that pay cut could just help. I think that's like a culture where it's like, hey, like this is something we do. It clearly helped us win a championship. So I do think that could be a motivating factor. And then even for some of these other extensions coming up, like Hart, that is something I'm flagging. I believe you would know better than me, but I believe he has a $17 million team option for next season.
Let me check that. I think it's a little more than that, but probably something, yeah, that they would want him to decline. And so 22.4 million team option for next year.
Yeah, that's more than I thought. Yeah. So yeah, $22 million team option there. Yeah, they'd ideally they'd want him to decline, and I don't know, like Hart, especially because that is like the Villanova ties with him and Brunson and Mikal. Could they decline it and negotiate something where it's like, hey, Hart, I know your value is probably closer to like 25 million a year, but could you take $15 million a year to play with some of your friends? I think they are gonna just need like a little bit of sacrifice and a little bit of buy-in if they want to keep this core five nucleus together. Even if they don't, I think they're in a really good spot and they have a well-rounded roster. But I think these are just things you have to flag with the Thunder, with the Celtics, with the Nuggets, with all of these recent champions sort of losing key pieces. These are just sort of the moves you have to keep in mind with this team. And it's especially worth talking about because they didn't really do much this offseason. So
No.
this is like the big talking point of the team. But yeah, any other contract thoughts before we maybe move ahead to some of the more
One
aspirational
reason I
stuff?
do, other than the Villanova connection, I do think Josh Hart absolutely wants to stay in New York because I really do think his post-playing career is going to be something media driven and probably has a better opportunity to make his name known being with one of the most high profile teams in the league. So I think part of that is another reason why he would love to stay in New York. I don't anticipate either of them not getting that extension. So I think they're going to remain Knicks for a few years.
Yeah, I think that's a good point about the media stuff, and yeah, I definitely agree. Um, at this point we usually talk about like rotations and starting lineups and stuff, but like the Knicks, it's so set in stone. They're just coming off the championship. I think everyone kind of knows what the core group is. So my big question for the Knicks this season, and it doesn't determine their championship ability necessarily, but my big question regular season wise is how do they just sort of avoid the malaise of the regular season? Because for the past few years, it just sort of seems like they've been, dogging it a little bit, which, hey, a lot of teams do. And obviously, once the playoffs came around, they went on that amazing run. And even the year before they knocked off the Celtics, they clearly have another gear to reach in the playoffs. But how do they sort of avoid just some of the malaise? Or maybe it's just like, hey, this team has so much continuity. It's year two with Mike Brown. Everything's going to be firing on all cylinders after that championship run. But yeah, ultimately, like, where do you stand on that piece of this next season?
I mean, they all are saying the right things, whether it's Brunson, Jordan Clarkson had a quote, how they're definitely motivated to go back to back. I think maybe see them get off to a little bit of a slow start might be a little understandable, especially Jalen Brunson should be ready for the opener without question, but, after the wrist surgery, we'll see how. If he looks 100% to start the year. Um, and it's an unfortunate reality in the NBA. For a lot of teams that, they're just going through the motions for part of that 82 game schedule. Um, we'll probably see it with the Sixers when they're not playing Embiid or LeBron certain games, load management and whatnot. So, the Knicks have never, at least recently, been a dominant regular season team. Even reaching the conference finals the year before last and reaching the winning the finals this year. They weren't dominant regular season teams, very good, but not dominant 60 win type of team. So I think Mike Brown might do a little experimenting at some times, whether it's throwing Kolick in there, even if no one's really out of the rotation, giving Mo Diawara more of a shot. Yeah, he might do that. And like I said, if they don't add that third big, giving OG times as a center, just seeing how that works. So doing a little bit of experimentation. He did it last regular season, and people were questioning it, and they can't anymore because they won the championship. So. It probably is somewhat inevitable that at some points, you don't have full, you're not fully engaged during the regular season. So the Knicks might have those times. I don't know if they're going to be the number one seed. Uh, we can see them as a favorite. Of course, I still do to come out of the East, but that doesn't necessarily mean I think they're going to be the top seed in the East. And we've seen it often where teams aren't the top seed and make it to the finals. Pacers, another team who they're never really a top two team, at least recently, and they go far in the playoffs, at least when Halliburton's healthy. But yeah, it's gonna be even last year. They had that stretch where they lost 7 and 9, and I think the seventh loss or somewhere towards the end of that. It was a game of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and they got destroyed by the Dallas Mavericks. Like it was embarrassing. Definitely the low point of the season. So yeah, there probably will be a stretch where they don't look anything close to a championship team. But in the end, I fully expect them to be at worst probably third in the East. And that's not really going to hurt their championship odds in my eyes, as if they were first or second. So yeah, they'll probably have those stretches where the regular season they don't look anything close to what they did during this postseason run. But seeing it as I did this past season, it's not really going to bother me too much unless, they're 50 games into the season and they're 500. Then, I might be saying, what's going on, guys? Let's pick it up. But I definitely don't anticipate that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's just the reality with most teams in the league. Like 82 games, it's a really long season. It takes a lot to win 60 plus games. And honestly, I don't think we're going to see a team reach that 60 game threshold with some of the new lottery odds. I do think maybe that could hurt the Knicks in some way because there's gonna be no easy nights. at the same time, I do think they might be just a little bit sharper in the regular season, based on the fact that uh, this group has a full year together with Mike Brown, with that new system. Because I feel like, at least from an outsider's perspective, a lot of the issues were like around some of the confusion of Mike Brown's system and how nuanced it was. I feel like that was, at least early on, like some of their problems. I know you referenced that Martin Luther King game. That was definitely a vivid memory for me. I remember because like the day after, it was all these like Towns trade rumors and stuff. It's like, whoa, what is happening with the Knicks right now? This is a bit insane. But yeah, ultimately, like, I think they're gonna still be a top three seed. I feel extremely comfortable saying that, barring any injuries. I just think, like, yeah, like most teams, they're gonna have some highs and lows, and then maybe the center room will factor into that a little bit. But yeah, maybe a little bit sharper. Maybe they jump up and they have that one seed. But yeah, I have a hard time seeing them, and this isn't like a shot, being like that absolute regular season juggernaut. Because, like I said, I just don't think any team is gonna, including the Spurs and Thunder, are gonna win 60 plus games this year. I think it's just gonna be a little bit of a different NBA than we are used to in that sense. But yeah, I again, it's not a big concern. It's just kind of a question that I have about this team in the regular season. As a team that just doesn't have many other questions outside of this in the center room. That's kind of it with the team. With that being said, I think we can move on to breakout players. So yeah, I mean, I think breakout seasons are different for every player, but yeah, a player who, it's not going to be a most improved player on this team because they have so much established talent, but a breakout player in the sense that they're going to play a bigger role than many are expecting right now.
Yeah, and it's an interesting question because, I follow the Knicks. I follow everyone, but I follow the Knicks the most. But I feel like if you asked me that question for the 29 other teams, I could probably come up with a better answer than I can for the Knicks because it's difficult. Their whole starting lineups 30, give or take a year. Hard to anticipate a breakout, pretty much just staying who they are. The only new piece, Drummond, is 32, 33. He's a former All-Star. He's not going to reach those heights again. So obviously he's not a breakout candidate. Jordan Clarkson's been in the league quite a while. Stammet, possibly. He's had a couple seasons where if he hasn't averaged double figures, he's averaged close to that. McBride, he's that guy who's going to play 20, 25 minutes a game. I don't really anticipate that changing. So out of all the rotation guys, yeah, it's really difficult to say one that this guy's going to, you compare his stats 26, 27, and 25, 26, you see a noticeable growth. So in this case, I'm probably going to go with someone like Mo Diawara. Okay. Yeah. Because again, the top nine guys, there's no guy that you could say, all right, he's got a step or two further he can take. Diawara definitely showed it in spurts last year. Even had a few games where he started. Proved that he could knock down three-pointers. The potential is there to be a very good defensive player, nice wingspan. So yeah, he would probably be my choice. I think he'll play a little more this year than he did last year. A fully healthy team, it's still going to be tough for him or Kolek to be in that postseason rotation. But yeah, Diawara should have his moments. His average on the year might have been 4 points per game, but that was a lot of garbage time when he did have more of a role. There was one game where he shot 13 or 14 3-point attempts, and you actually love seeing that because you love seeing the confidence. He made maybe 5 of them that game, so that's like an average day shooting the three ball. But yeah, you just loved seeing him. He's open. He's gonna shoot it. So yeah, in that sense, he's probably the best choice. I mean, I love OG. He's probably bound to miss some time. You just hope it's never a long-term injury. When that occurs, Diawara should definitely be inserted into the rotation for those games. So he did struggle a lot in summer league. That was a little concerning because you'd want to see a player like him if you want him to take that next step to dominate. But again, they played summer league without really a point guard. The whole thing, it was terrible to watch. So I'm not gonna put too much into that. So yeah, you just love seeing the confidence in him. He's gonna shoot that three if he's open. Didn't hesitate, and you mentioned earlier some of the second round finds they've had in the past, whether it's Deuce, Mitchell Robinson. So the hope is that Diawara can be that guy, and if it's not this year. Next year again, a guy like Deuce Sleeves, maybe another Jordan Clarkson, might be gone after next year, because maybe they believe in Diarra and believe he could step into that rotation role. And in order to do that, he would have to have a larger role this year. I think he will. Again, team's fully healthy. He might not be playing, but for the Knicks, maybe the hardest team in the league to pick out a breakout guy. I mean, even the Thunder, they're gonna have to play either Sorbo, one of the rookies, Steritz, with not Jovic, Topic. You figure one of those four have to play. With the Knicks, it's almost the same rotation minus Mitch. Insert Andre Drummond.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, DRO was the guy I had in mind as well. Like you said, there's just not a whole lot of open minutes available, but there is some potentially open minutes in the front court. Can you play some like small ball five maybe? I think that's intriguing. The floor spacing is there, the length, the size. As that like hustle player, I do think he could carve out a role. Can he? I think you said like 4 points last year. Like, can he get up to like 7 points a game or something? Can he establish himself as a rotation player? I think those are like fair questions. And out of anyone like on the bench, I think that's most likely. And then, as we noted, the starters are just so established. There's not going to be a breakout season. So yeah, I think he's kind of the only answer here. I would have loved to go with Kolek, who I've been a fan of forever, so literally since he was in high school. There's just no opportunity when you look at Jose, when you look at Deuce, when you look at Jordan Clarkson, who I kind of forgot about, to be honest. There's just no opportunity for him to crack the rotation. Unfortunately, I think we did see like he has real potential last year, especially during that like NBA Cup run when they had some injuries. It's like, oh, this is finally the moment for my guy. But yeah, unfortunately,
Christmas Day, he
yeah,
was
Christmas
awesome.
Day, yes, that was a big one. Um, yeah, but there's just not enough opportunities. If Deuce was traded, I would maybe say him, but yeah, I think at this point, DR is the right guy. I think the floor spacing component could be really big in the open front court minutes. So I think that makes a lot of sense. With that being said, let's move on to the over under win total projections. We kind of briefly touched on where the Knicks might stack up in the East. Right now it's 53.5 wins. So are you feeling the over or the under? And then ultimately, I know the Knicks are rightfully the favorites to come out of the East right now, but who do you view as some of their biggest challengers?
That's a tough one. I mean, they won 53 last year, so they haven't won 55 plus since Patrick Ewing was there. So it's been a while. Even the 2013 year, I believe they won 54. So that's really the only year since Patrick Ewing that they've went over 53 and a half. Kind of crazy, but a lot of terrible years. But anyhow, oof. Again, like you said, just without those guaranteed wins at the end of the year, whether it's Nets, Wizards, Jazz, all those teams that were tank kings, they might be a guaranteed one. But other than that, they're not going to be any gimmies like there was to end last season. So this isn't even me saying the Knicks will regress, but I think a similar record to what they've had the past 3 years, which I know they've won at least 50 the previous 2 years as well. So I do think they'll get to 50, but not far over that. So again, won't affect how I think they'll do in the playoffs, but I'll say a slight under, maybe 51 or 52 or equal their 53. So barely under, but I'll go under. As to the biggest threats in the East, I mean, the East is pretty much as loaded as it's been in quite some time. I mean, trying to pick six teams to avoid the play-in is difficult. You could see seeds 7 through 10 all finishing over 500 this year. There would be no surprise there. Um, You know, we look at on paper, the obvious choice is the 76ers, but again, that's on paper. Embiid, will he actually be available? There's just no idea to. There's no way of knowing what Embiid we're going to get this year, and you know even the Embiid that was available in the playoffs, he definitely had his moments against the Celtics, but against the Knicks, yes, on offense he had his moments, but on defense he was a traffic cone. Like no lateral movement, and the Knicks really took advantage of that. Um, you know, Jalen, there's going to be a lot on Jalen Brown's plate on the defensive end. You know, LeBron's definitely not going to give it at that on all the time. Maxey will give his effort, but obviously he's smaller. So yeah, their defense will definitely be a question mark. Offense, probably top three for sure. But yeah, that's a question you gotta have health for pretty much at least LeBron and Embiid. Uh, I know, I know the Celtics trade wasn't good for Jalen Brown, but they do have a good center rotation now. From everything I've heard and I agree with is starting Mitch, bringing Kata off the bench, especially because you know get closer to the penalty. You take out Mitch, bring in Kata. The Knicks really didn't have that luxury because they had Karl Anthony Towns. They tried the double big for a little while, didn't work out. But yeah, I like that Celtics center rotation a lot more than I did last season, where you know Luka Garza, solid player, but no. Uh, so 48 minutes of solid center play now for the Celtics. You expect Derek White to shoot better than he did last year. You hope that's a 1 year outlier for him. And I mean, Paul George wasn't bad last year. Like Sixers series, he was, you know, Michael Jordan the first quarter and then completely invisible quarters 2 through 4 every game. It was, you know, he probably averaged like 12 points in the first quarter and like 5 the rest of the game. It was ridiculous. But, you know, he could still give it. He'll miss his 25, 30 games for sure. But, yeah, the Celtics, I still see them as a threat. It seems like the Cavs and Pacers I see as regular season threats, but come the postseason, I'm really not afraid of them. And I know the Pistons own the Knicks in the regular season last year. I get it, but you know, yeah, they lost some of their toughness with beef stew. Jalen Duran turns into a pumpkin in the postseason, and yes, he's gonna come back even if he hasn't re-signed. But yeah, I don't think he'll be fully happy. Is John Collins an upgrade over Tobias Harris? He's younger, but I don't really know if he's an upgrade. Tobias was that second option in the playoffs. I don't know if Collins can be that. So, you know, who else am I forgetting? You know, Orlando, Atlanta, good teams, not really a championship threat in my eyes. So, probably Philly and Boston will be the two teams I'm most concerned about. I didn't mention Indiana. They're such a hard team to know what's going to go on with them. Will Halliburton look 100%? Um, Zubac is probably an upgrade over what Miles Turner was 2 years ago. But Kelly Oubre, nice pickup off the bench. And then Toronto, I didn't mention as well. Good team, but I still think Philly and Boston would probably be the two biggest threats in the East. But again, a lot of good teams in the East. Again, I probably could see 10 teams, not even mentioning the Wizards, they'll definitely be greatly improved and probably still fall short of the play-in. So, yeah, improved East, but top two threats, Boston and Philly.
Yeah, for sure. I think that makes a lot of sense. Also gonna hit the slide under. I think they literally win like 53, 52 games, and even at that number, I wouldn't rule them out as the number one seed. I feel like if you look at the standings like 10 years ago, there were years where the number one seed literally won 53, 52 games, and I think we could kind of go back to that. So yeah, I see them as the slight under. These over under lines are so damn accurate. So
Mm-hmm.
very slight under. I've been hitting way too many of the overs when I'm doing these season previews. I definitely need some regression there. In terms of biggest threats, I'm gonna go with the Pacers.
Okay.
I'm big on the. I feel bad for my viewers who every like Eastern Conference thing. I'm probably gonna say I'm high on the Pacers. I really like this Pacers team. I know there are some like valid questions about Halliburton, especially returning to form, but I'm just gonna bank on that guy. I love Halliburton. I know as a Knicks fan, you probably aren't a big fan, but I love his style of play, and I also just think like based on IQ alone, I feel like he's going to be back to his form. I think his game just doesn't rely on athleticism that much, so I think he can bounce back. We've seen guys kind of bounce back from that Achilles injury, especially Durant. Tatum looked pretty good. I mean, it was only like 20 regular season games, so the proof will still be in the pudding with him. But I think Halliburton, based on IQ, based on passing, based on shooting, I think he's going to return to form. I'm banking on that. I love the Zubats fit. I know they might have to like kind of slow it down, but also like Halliburton off the Achilles injury, maybe slowing it down kind of makes sense a little bit. And like more importantly, I thought their biggest weakness was defense and rebounding with Turner. Turner's just not a very good rim protector. I know he gets a lot of blocks, whatever. He's not a very good rim protector. He's not a good one-on-one defender. He's a terrible rebounder. And like at points, like that was a clear weakness for them. And I think Zubats just fixes that. And I mean, throughout the last few years, the Pacers have given the Knicks troubles, especially that 2025 conference finals. And I still think like based on their all around offensive threats, based on Halliburton, based on like Nemhard and Neesmith being really good defenders. Siakam's kind of a difficult matchup, even though the Knicks have a really good win defense. They just present a lot of challenges, and then like Zubats, he's kind of a challenge for Cat in some ways, and he can defend Cat a little bit, especially better than Turner could. That's for
Yeah.
sure. So I'm kind of like all in on this Pacers team, not just like oh as a good matchup for the Knicks. Like I could see, I'm so serious when I say this, and I'm in the minority. I could see them winning the entire thing. I I couldn't be higher on the Pacers, and I do acknowledge there's a chance where it's like, okay, Halliburton just doesn't return to form. Maybe Zubats like takes a step back because he is like kind of older and had like that outlier season. And I'm just totally wrong, but I'm choosing to believe in the Pacers. The other teams, I would say like it's like between like Sixers and Cavs for me, but I think there's just too much uncertainty there in terms of like Embiid's health. Like you mentioned, I think that's the number one thing, and then the Cavs is like you're banking on this double big lineup that can't really space the floor, and James Harden in the playoffs. Like, yeah, I get like talent wise, they're probably deserve to be in that upper echelon, but I can't take them that seriously. For the Pistons, it's just like that secondary creation, that shooting out. Celtics, yeah, like I think they're going to be really good in the regular season, but I just don't think you have like a true second option in the playoffs. I think that will bite them. Raptors, I love the Kawhi move. Big upgrade over Ingram. Not enough lead playmaking, not enough center play. Magic, no perimeter shooting still. I think they could be a bit better, but come on. And then Miami, I guess, would be the other big one. Just can we get some like perimeter creators? Can we get
Yeah, I mean,
just
that's the one team I forgot to mention. I mean, Klay Thompson definitely on the decline. Still a good shooter. I mean, it was a good pickup because they badly needed shooting, but yeah, Giannis gets hurt. They're worse than they were last year.
yeah. And that's the other thing. I don't even know if I can bank on Giannis being healthy at this point. So I don't know. That's sort of where I see the East a little bit. I'm super high on the Pacers. Like other than the Pacers, like I don't know. I have a hard time seeing anyone match up with this Knicks team at the highest level, honestly. Yeah, I don't I like the Peyton Watson move for the Cavs. I think that helps. That gives them an on ball guy, but I don't think Peyton Watson is the difference between the Cavs getting swept and then all of a sudden beating the Knicks. We
No.
discussed the flaws with the other teams. So yeah, I honestly I view the Pacers and Knicks as in terms of playoffs, maybe not regular season, top two teams in the East, personally.
I mean, I would like to see them match up again because, yeah, we won the championship, and that's better than anything else they could do. But yeah, knowing that the Pacers knocked us out the previous 2 years, yeah, it would be nice to get some type of revenge. I mean, I'm not making excuses, but having OG hurt really hurt him 2 years ago. Last year, uh, craziest bouncing in shot in NBA history. Even the Nemhart game winner 2 years ago. So a lot went wrong, but again, they came out on top. Um, Maybe with Mike Brown, it's a different story, and we could eliminate them. So yeah, that would be fun to see. Maybe that's the last thing the Knicks need to do, especially since that's been a rivalry since the 1990s, and hearing Reggie Miller call those games, like he tried to be unbiased, but like at times he wasn't, and yeah.
Yeah, I kind of love that matchup. Like even as a Celtics fan, like I just don't have like title hopes. Like if that's the Eastern Conference Finals, I'm gonna be absolutely thrilled this
They,
season. And
they were fun games. They absolutely were. And they did not have an answer for Siakam. They put hard on him a lot, and Siakam was just eating them alive. So, maybe Mike Brown could come up with something better. Because, yeah, it was Siakam was actually probably their best player in both of those series. Rather, I mean, Howard Burton was great too, but, Siakam was Eastern Conference Finals MVP and no MVP in semifinals, but I would say he was probably their most impactful player that year as well.
yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, the Siakam thing's really interesting. Because it is like a true 1A, 1B situation, and maybe even more so now with the Halliburton injury. But yeah, I think he would have won Finals MVP if I mean, it depends. Like
Mm.
if Halliburton maybe he looked like he was on pace for a crazy Game 7, but I think there's a world where he stays healthy, the Pacers win, but it's Siakam that still gets Finals MVP. Through 6 games of that Finals, I think he was probably their best player. But that's aside from the point. Super interesting season ahead of us, especially this Eastern Conference. It's really crazy. But yeah, unless you have any closing thoughts on the Knicks, I want to give you a chance to plug your work, tell our listeners where they can find you at.
Oh yeah, it's an exciting season. I always think I've been thinking a lot, like especially Um, I got to be up early. I'm a teacher, so I usually try to go to bed right after games sometimes, and those difficult losses where you lose on a buzzer beater, or um, you miss the game where you're sitting there for an hour and a half, like I just can't fall asleep. You're thinking about the game. I wonder now, fresh off a championship, if it'll bother me that much, and I'm probably going to say probably will once the time comes. Because yeah, it's awesome that they finally got that. It's such a weight off my shoulders being a fan for well over 2 decades. To finally see them accomplish that. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting season. Hopefully a little less stressful knowing that they have that championship in the bag. Definitely rooting for them game 1. Uh, spoiling LeBron's debut with the Sixers. Definitely be a fun watch. And, seeing that banner being raised just will be incredible. It's a shame that the first home game against the Celtics is February or March, something crazy like that. So is Mitch really gonna have to wait that long to get his ring? I mean, I don't know what they're gonna do regarding that because yeah, that's a crazy long wait. But yeah, YouTube, you can find me teacher talking sports, talk about a bunch of sports there. For Dunking Wolves and Daily Knicks, Timberwolves and Knicks related sites for fan sided. So you could check me out there as well.
Awesome, Kenny. I appreciate you hopping on the show. And for our listeners, make sure to go check out Kenny's work. He does a great job. We'll close out the episode here. Peace out.
Later.